This is 4.1 student notes, and we are going to be writing equations from graphs. And if you notice, it says to write two equations, one in terms of sine and the other in cosine. There are two graphs at the end which are not sine and cosine, and we'll talk about those when we get to them. The first thing that I think is helpful is kind of a formula. So this is what I usually start with. Y equals, your first number in your equation is usually a shift up and down. So this is the first box you're going to fill in, or one of them. Then you have your amplitude. After that, you have your trig function. Then you're going to fill in your b. Then you have your parentheses, and this is either going to be a theta or an x, depending on radians or degrees. And then you're going to have a left and right shift. If you notice from this graph, you have the top marked, the bottom, and then you have the middle, which really helps out because then you can see this right here, which is your shift up and down. So I'm going to start with my y equals, and I'm going to start filling in my boxes here. And I think this first box is usually the easiest to fill in, and I have an up and down shift of -5. Okay, this thing right here can change. So from here, my next box is the amplitude. So we need to see what's our distance from the top and the sinusoidal axis. Looks like it's going to be a distance of 7. Then I'm going to have my trig function. So we need to decide, are we going to do a sine or cosine? How about I start right here, and I'm going to say I'm going to do a cosine first. So how about we do cosine? I'm going to leave a place for my b, and it looks like we're in thetas. Okay, and since I started right here, this is going to be a -8. And I did mark it on my graph. I could have started here at 20, or I could have started here at 4. And if I started at 4, that would have been a +4. All right, now in order to find b, remember you need to look at a full cycle. So from 8 to 12, this is a cycle. That is a distance of 12. Now remember, in order, you usually take, because this is theta, you usually take 360, you divide by b, and that gives you your cycle, which is 12. You can just switch these two, and it's exactly the same, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say 360 over 12, and that's going to give you your b value, which is going to be so much easier. So that b value is 30. So there's my blanks filled in. So that's cosine. Now I'm going to write my second one, which is sine. And again, you can pick where you want to start. You can start in the middle here, 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 or here. And I'm just going to pick where I want to start. I usually start closest to my y-axis. And I know that's over here, which is the closest, but I feel like starting here. So doing my sine, my first one, my shift up and down, is not going to change. It doesn't look like my amplitude should change either. My trig function is now sine. Your b value should not change either. Your theta should not change, but your starting point is. So I'm going to start here and say this is where I'm beginning. So this is sine. It is going up first. So my amplitude, or this number right here, is positive. And so I need to figure out this number. So between 2 and 8 is going to be this critical point. So between 2 and 8 is going to be, how about 5? So this is going to be -5. For number 2, I'm going to begin with my formula again. This first blank, remember, is a shift up or down, and that is marked. It's a shift up of 5. Then we need to find our highest and our lowest. It looks like our highest is 7 and our lowest is 3, so we can find our amplitude. So it looks like your amplitude is 2. Now you need to decide on your trig function. And I like to just stick with the same thing every time. So I started with cosine. I'm going to start with cosine on this one. So I'm going to mark where I begin. This is cosine. So your cosine starts at pi over 6. So here's cosine. I'm leaving my b. It looks like this is an x. So I'm saying x, and I'm starting at pi over 6. So now I just need to figure out my v value. So if you find a full cycle goes from here to here, from top to top, So your cycle is 7 pi over 6 minus pi over 6. That is going to be 6 over 6, which is just pi. So I'm going to take my 360 or 2 pi and divide it by pi, and that is just 2. So your b value is 2. My second equation I'm going to write in sine. And remember, your shift up and down does not change. My 2 shouldn't change. My sine does. This 2 does not change. My x does not change. So now I just need to decide where I want to start my sine function. And it looks like this is an easy one to start with. So I'm going to say sine. Now if you notice, this sine is going down first and then up. So what does change here is this number right here. So I'm going to have to change my sine before my amplitude, because my where I started my sine function is going to go down, so this is going to have to be a minus. Now I need to find this number right here, so I'm just finding the critical point in between these two. So if you add these and divide by 2, you're just finding the average. It looks like this number in the middle is going to be 5 pi over 12. Okay, number 3, this x did not print on your paper, so make sure that you label it. So this is going to be a radians. All right, so let's see. Y equals, the middle, it's at 4. Plus your amplitude should be a 5. And again, I'm starting with cosine. I'm going to leave a space for my b value. Since I now know this is radians, where am I going to start? How about I start cosine right here? Looks like that is going to be at 1. So now I need to find my cycle. How about, that is a value of 12. So this is going to be 2 pi over 12. That's your b. So that reduces to pi over 6. Let's try sine. So here is the 5, I'm sorry, 4 plus 5, my sine, pi over 6 does not change. And let's see, where do I want to start sine? If this is my sinusoidal axis, let's be different. Let's start over here on the left side. So I'm going to say this is my sine. So this is going to be x plus 2. All right, number 4. Now, this one is totally different. I've got my sinusoidal axis. I know the top and the bottom, but I only know my starting point is at 0, and after several places or several different cycles, I end at pi. So I'm going to have to figure out what one cycle is right here. So let's figure out what we do know. I know I have a shift of 4. I have an amplitude of 9, starting with cosine. I'm going to leave my b value. I do have an x there, so that's going to be my variable I fill in. And since I have a point right there, how about we just start at 0? And again, you don't have to put the 0 there. You could just say an x value. So now we need to figure out our b. So we've got 1 cycle, I've got 2 cycles, 3 and 4 cycles. Just to give you an idea of what we got here. So from 0 to pi, we have 4 cycles. So I'm going to say 2 pi over pi minus 4. Why did I say pi over 4? Because if I say pi minus 0, that gives me my cycles. And if I say pi divided by 4, that gives me 1 cycle. All right? So 2 pi over 4 is going to give me 8. Okay. 8 is my b value. Well, I'm done with cosine. Let's look at sine. I might need those critical points for cosine. In fact, I know I will. 4 stays, 9 stays, sine. 8 is your b value, and x. Let's see where we can start for sine. You could start at 4 and be a negative sign. How about we start at this point so that you could have a positive sine function? So it looks like, I'm going to find critical points real quick. Pi over 4 divided by 4, and I can get my critical points. That's going to be pi over 16. So each one of these points is pi over 16. So it looks like my sine is going to be 3 pi over 16. Sine was a little bit hard. All right, let's try another one. It looks like we have some scatter points here as well. Let's try it. Y equals your middle point right here. Looks like it's 9. We're going to need that one. Plus your amplitude is 47. I'm sticking with cosine first. Leave a space for b. Looks like we have a theta. So I'm going to say theta and decide where I want to start. Well, I'm starting here. This looks like the easiest one. So I'm going to say theta minus 3. All right, let's find out our cycle. So from 3 to 23, that's a distance of 20. So this is going to be 360 over 20 to get our b value. And that is going to be 18. All right, to find sine, let's fill in what we do know for sure. We know 9. We know 47. Fill in sine. Your 18 will stay. Your theta will stay. So now we need to decide where sine is going to begin. You can start sine here or here. I'm going to begin sine here, just for the heck of it. All right. So we have two tops. This bottom is right in the middle. So if you find the average of 3 and 23, that is going to be 13. Now find the average of 3 and 13, and that is going to be 8. So that is this point right here. So that should be minus 8. Now, what I did notice is that because I started here and went down first, that is going to affect the sine in front of my amplitude. So it looks like I need to change that to be a negative. If you wanted to find this number and do a positive sign, that would be correct as well. All right, these last two graphs, of course, are not sine or cosine. This number 6 is going to be a secant and a cosecant. So let's try those. So this is secant and cosecant. But the nice thing about this is you're still doing a sine and cosine graph. So let's look at this. If you start at the top and end at the top, remember that's a cosine or a secant graph. And then if you start at the middle, let me try a different color here. If you start at the middle, how about this one? And end back at the middle, that's a sine or a cosecant graph. Just to remind you of those. So let's look at our two equations here. So our middle is already marked. That's our new sinusoidal axis. Your amplitude is going to be 2.5. I'm going to start with cosine or secant, just like I've done before. So secant, leave my b blank. This, if you can't read it, is an x value, and I know it is because I've got pi, so this is going to be radians. And then where I'm going to start, how about right here at the beginning, at pi over 2. All right, so we need to find our b value, and that looks like it's going to be 4. Okay, let's try cosecant. So nothing is changing so far. 1.7 plus 2.5. I'm changing to cosecant. 4 stays the same. X. And then we need to decide where we're going to start. And I've got it marked at, that's 7 pi over 8. And asymptote did move a little bit, just in case you were wondering. All right, so number 7, how I would do this one. Some people have asked about this. Well, the first one I would do is, of course, this is a tangent. So let's draw that one. So y equals, your shift up and down is a -2. Your amplitude is 5. This is a tangent. Leave your b value. This right here should be a theta. So we're going to say theta. And then remember, tangent always started in the middle. So I'm going to say 2. Define your b value. Remember, you're always working with pi or 180. And since we're in theta, so I'm going to say 180 divided by how long it took me to do a cycle, and it was this many degrees. So 20 to 8 is going to be 12. So that gives me 15. This could also be an inverse cotangent. So if I do cotangent, and I know I'm kind of doing this out of order, if I change this to cotangent, that means that I had to flip it over, because remember, cotangent usually looks like this. If I made it cotangent, I had to make this negative. Okay? So remember, cotangent starts with an asymptote, so you can make it -20, -8, or 4. Let's make it -8. So that would be +8. Okay, if you have any questions, please bring them to class.